All right, we're here. Wait, no.
I like how I
No.
like how we do. I like I like how we do. All right, we're here now, and then when the guest joins, we do it all over again. It's like it's a good.
No,
It's
I'm going to
it's
start.
a good.
Here we are. The data protection show. I can't steal my man's line. Shout out to another food review page. That's his line. All right, we're here is his line. I don't want to take his line.
Another food review. Best
Here we are.
Instagram account on earth.
Yes, the data protection breakfast.
Hey Andy, so I gotta tell you, I like Chicago the band. I like the music, but I didn't think I could find a button-down shirt of the level of prestige that trumpet player is wearing at this time. Like, we gotta get our hands on whatever that thing is, man. That is a magnificent piece of wardrobe.
These guys.
I need to incorporate it into my rotation.
Chicago is so underrated. Or maybe they're rated perfectly. I don't know. Maybe they're rated perfectly. They are quintessential cheesy 80s rock band.
Yeah.
So good. This song sears itself into your brain and doesn't leave for weeks on end. So I hope everyone look away. Power ballad, really weird video with a flaming car and a lady tossing a cigarette and a man singing high pitched. It's crazy and a great video. And we liked it because it's like AdTech has this. We'll talk about it later, but AdTech has a look away feel to it on occasion. But
I think like
you tee up Derek because he's definitely your friend.
Derek is my homeboy, man. We met at Oracle. We both worked there together. We're veterans of the Oracle Data Cloud wars of the last 5 years and all the acquisitions that happened really quickly. He's kind of non-traditional, man. Like he joined, I think he was a partner at a law firm. Did some litigation stuff, and he's a tremendous orator and speaker. So I can see how he was a super awesome litigator. But he did that for a long time, man, like 15, 20 years, and then decided he wanted to try, his wits at in-house. And I saw a lot of people come and go while I was at Oracle. Like Derek was one of the easiest transitions in, and he had no point of reference for AdTech. Now he's an AdTech GC. Just think about what I just said. AdTech wasn't part of his brain, when he joined Oracle. And 4 years later, or whatever it is, 4 or 5 years later, he's the GC of an AdTech company. Like this is Derek Zolner in a nutshell.
It's mind blowing, to be honest, because the technology is so complicated. And what Oracle was doing is especially difficult because they bought 5-6 companies in a 3-year span and put them all together to create a service offering. That takes some time, but you have to think strategically about how those all fit together, because all of a sudden you're selling them all, and all of a sudden you're the lawyer repping the contracts for all of those. And so that's just exceedingly difficult and very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, he's a beast, and I was the first ad techie lawyer at Oracle. Derek came not that long after, like I said, I think people looked at me as this source of information and knowledge about the ins and outs of ad tech. Half the time back then we were making it up as we went along, trying to figure out what yes was and what no was and what right is and what right isn't. But one thing I'll say about Derek, and I'm glad he's not here to hear this because I don't want him to get too cocky, but in addition to the fact that he's sharp and was a fast learner, he was a tremendous voice of reason, right? Like he would always be like, man, we've just spun up all this stuff for this one thing that you and your team are super focused on. But where's the actual risk associated with this? Where's the harm? Where's the damage? What's the problem that this is creating that makes it such a priority? And he really helped a lot of the time in just kind of rebalancing priority and reorienting energy to the places where you could have the most impact. And he has an instinct for this. That is incredible.
That's clearly him. That's also a litigator in action, right? That's let me narrow this down to what is cause, what are the key issues, and what are the actual issues causing harm or damage. And that's something that is so that point alone is what makes what if you're going to argue that a litigator makes an effective in-house lawyer, that's got to be the number one driver.
He's the case.
Yeah,
he's the case.
They know how to drive that to that point.
Yeah. Derek is the prototype, and I think honestly kind of rare example of litigator transitioning and translating all of their skill sets super effectively to more corporate, in-house legal manager. He's one of the best I've ever seen.
Love it. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's do it, man. And let's buy this shirt. I need it.
All right. Oh, man. All right. Here we are, the Data Protection Breakfast Club with our friend Derek Zolner from Centro, and Pedro with a Gators hat on. Is that camo?
That's right. University. Yeah, man. I live in Georgia, man. So I gotta kind of be a little low key Gator fan. But
before we start with Derek, who's your favorite Gator, athlete?
Mine?
Yeah.
This is obvious. Tim Tebow.
That's obvious. Oh.
This is obvious. So here's the story. I was at the University of Florida from late 2005 to 2008. During those couple of years, Tim Tebow and his greatness brought us 2 football national championships, and the basketball team led by Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer, Al Horford, and those guys brought us 2 basketball championships while I was on campus. It was an amazing time to be at the University of Florida. So, Tim Tebow's awesome. I have a Tim Tebow story, but it's kind of long, but I can give you the abbreviated version.
What is it?
The football practice facility is right next to the law school. And one night I was walking my dog, and this is before Tim Tebow was super famous outside of the state of Florida. He was always a famous quarterback because he's from Jacksonville, so people knew who he was in Florida. But I was walking my dog Mango, and I ran into a young guy on the walk, and turned out it was Tim Tebow. And so, chatted him up for a second, wished him luck during the football season, whatever. Fast forward a couple years, he's now won like the Heisman Trophy. He's like, he gave the speech. He's like the most famous athlete in the country at the time, maybe. And I walk into the Outback Steakhouse. I think it was an Outback Steakhouse. Maybe it was another restaurant. I think it was an Outback Steakhouse in Gainesville. It's a long time ago. A lot of tequila. But I walk into a restaurant in Gainesville, and I'm sitting at the bar, and Tim Tebow walks into the restaurant and is working his way towards a more private area towards the back. And a couple minutes later, he walks back out. He looks me straight in my eye, and my dog's name is Mango, and he's like, "How's Mango?" This is the most famous person. This is like a godlike figure in Gainesville. He's obviously a really famous athlete in the country, and he remembered my dog. I thought that was super dope. So shout out to Tim Tebow. He probably has no idea what I'm talking about, but
he's definitely.
If you ever watch this podcast,
he's
turn
a subscriber.
It off.
He's a subscriber, right?
He's definitely.
Yeah, I don't think Tim Tebow watches the Privacy.
One of those national championships was at the expense of my Sooners.
I believe that is correct.
It is correct. When I was there, right before I started at OU, I'm a little bit older than you, but right before, in the heyday of the late 80s, OU had like the number 1 basketball team and the number 1 football team at the same time, same kind of setup. During the 7 years I was there, they were terrible at both of them. Then as soon as I left, 2 years later, they won a national championship again. So I had the worst stretch of OU Sooner during my actual time there.
Well,
dude, I got to tell you, my stretch at the University of Florida was magical. It was just magic. And shout out to Chris Leak, by the way, who was the starting quarterback for the first national championship. Tim Tebow was his backup. But it was the opposite experience, man. It was just an amazing time to be in Gainesville.
Chris Leak, also a subscriber, right?
Definitely a subscriber.
Your college athletics programs have nothing on Colgate University. So our hockey team could beat the Florida Gators hockey team left and right. No. And really good swimming program too there.
What's his name? Who used to be the Oklahoma coach who went on to coach the Dallas Cowboys? What's this guy's name?
Switzer.
Oh, Barry Switzer, yeah.
Barry Switzer.
Everybody in Norman, Oklahoma has a Barry Switzer story because he used to have a booth at this Italian restaurant called Othello's, always in there holding court with a bunch of young co-eds. And he's just a campus legend. If you drank on campus, which if you were a college student, you did, you ran into Barry at some point.
And then
That's awesome.
He tried to take a bunch of guns through security at an airport, like crazy.
For safety.
Yeah. I guess so. Well,
personal protection.
All right. So Derek, you started at OU, but what happened after OU? You decided I'm going to go be an AdTech lawyer right away, right?
No. Well, so, this is, I get it. This is sort of an 80s themed podcast. And so my whole impression, you'll get this reference, of lawyers was LA law. I thought that's what people did as lawyers. And so that life seemed super sexy to me. And I knew no lawyers growing up. I barely anybody in my family had gone to college. I had 2 uncles that went to college. And so I decided I was going to go to law school. I was in my last semester of undergrad, and I was wondering what the hell I was going to do. I had a great house on campus right next to the football stadium. I loved being a college student. I was like, I'm just going to continue. I'm going to keep this rolling. I was like, what can I do with a poli-sci degree? Law school it is. Went to law school, and it turned out, it fit my skill set, we'll call it. And then I worked for a year in Kansas City. There are no good law jobs in Oklahoma. They're like 2 big firms. And so everybody either goes south to Dallas or north to Kansas City. So I went to Kansas City, and I worked at a firm where I did tobacco defense work for not even 1 year, about 9 months. Then
tobacco defense. Now that's the cutting edge stuff.
It actually, it was one time I was sitting at my desk, or one time I came in one morning sitting on my desk was a complaint that I had heard a story about on NPR on the way into work. It was a class action around menthol cigarettes. That was sort of the new wave new tack that the plaintiff's attorneys were going to take. So it was it was the stuff in the news I was seeing, but I was so low level. I was just reviewing docs and answering complaints and whatever else. And then my girlfriend at the time, then now wife, against my better advice, decided to go to law school too. And she went to Northwestern, and so I followed her up here, and then worked as a litigator at a firm called Vedder Price up here for 15, almost 16 years, and then realized that all of that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did you work with Mark Parton, who's now the CPO at Oracle? Because he was there, right?
Mark and I worked together. Yeah, we worked together. Hold on a second.
It's interesting while Derek goes and handles the thing. The better lawyer in that household is definitely not Derek. His wife is a super, super top lawyer and humble. I actually got to meet her one trip in Chicago. She's amazing. Well, I was just talking about what a great lawyer your wife is, Derek.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So, my Zoom setup is absolutely terrible. Andy, I think you have kids, right? You fight for space. I've got 4 kids, and so I had to kick somebody out of this place to get it because this is the best place. But there's also a printer in here that they all have access to, and so can just randomly print stuff. So apologies for the printer going for a crossword puzzle or something. I don't know what it is.
You know what I thought immediately when you had to step off, Derek, was I'm trying to remember this creature's name. The lizard. What was the lizard
you Squinty. Had? Squinty.
Squinty.
The one-eyed lizard.
Squinty. The one-eyed lizard named Squinty.
Yeah. My wife one weekend decided she was going to get a lizard and went on Craigslist and found somebody who was giving it away for free because they were moving and didn't want to take it. And so my wife packed up the kids. They drove over to this person's apartment, picked up Squinty, the one-eyed lizard, and he's still around, man. He's still around.
You got to.
I miss him, man. I miss him.
You have to accompany someone who's going to pick up a Craigslist lizard for.
Yeah, for sure.
2 people.
Yeah, at least. And that's what you
That's a
need to-
2-person job.
Yeah.
And you meet the seller at the police station. That would be
Yeah.
We're meeting not at Starbucks. We're meeting
Yeah.
at the police station.
But to Pedro's point, my wife is the better lawyer in the house. She's
Oh, for sure.
everything I know I learned from her. So she's a litigator and has been for her entire career too. But I started litigating because I didn't know what else lawyers did. You know, like when I went to law school, I thought lawyers, what do? They go to court, they argue cases, they, Perry Mason stuff with witnesses, they pull out the smoking gun or, they got you on the stand. So that's what I thought people did. But then at the end, it turns out it's really all about putting keywords in for searching electronic discovery and then writing a bunch of nasty letters back and forth with somebody on the other side. I mean, that's true. I got so burned out from it. By the end, that's what caused me to sort of go in-house. It was like, I don't see a future. I'm looking at the next 30 years of my career, 25 years. And if this is it, I got to do something else. And what I really liked were things where I could talk with a client, figure out what their business goal was. What are you trying to do here, really? Not how can I win this case or how can I generate fees or, what do I think the case should be about? But what do you think the case is about from a business perspective? How can we accomplish those goals and get there? But then litigation, nobody's happy at the end. I had a trial once where we won, full defense verdict. Case had been going on for 5 years. Nasty, nasty stuff. We won. I fully expect, it was the first trial I ever did. Fully expected at the end that the client was going to say, let's go pop champagne bottles and go have a big steak dinner. Because I saw my corporate colleagues, they'd have a deal closing. They'd have all these big deal dinners, and everybody's just blowing money on stuff. My clients were like, yeah, I guess, great, thanks, we won, but I paid you, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 5 years. I lost. We all lost. Nobody won this thing. And so I was like, you know what? I gotta get where I can be happiest doing what I'm doing, and I can have the most impact. And I can do things where I see how business actually works, help multiple parts of the business. I'm not just there for the bad parts. I can be there for the good parts and just bring that sort of problem solving skills from litigation to going in-house. So yeah, then I worked with Mark Parton was already at Oracle. Mark Parton was my initial contact. He was working in the cloud group at the time and pulled me in. Pedro was already there when I started, but Pedro was off doing data stuff. And
Derek, how did you find that transition? Did you go in and litigate, or you didn't? You just so how did you find that transition going from litigation to something completely new in a company where you're surrounded by a bunch of lawyers that presumably many of them had already cut their teeth on corporate work or business work and stuff like that?
Yeah, at Oracle, because it's so big, it's highly process driven and highly regimented. So, and that was actually, that's one of the frustrations why I wanted to go do something else. Oracle, great grounding for what I wanted to do. It was a great first in-house job for me and gave me a ton of foundational stuff that I still use now. But, the lawyers their focus is very limited, right? They are tasked with only reviewing certain things, and anything other than that, it's somebody else's job, right? You push it out and there's a lot of, it's very narrow siloing. So in that regard, it was really good for me because I could come in and I didn't have to worry about taking ownership of a deal and trying to captain the whole thing from beginning to end. I was really just plugging in on little things here and there. So it was a nice way to sort of ramp up and figure out what tolerances were on the various issues. And, frankly, it wasn't that hard because the issues, when you came down, were pretty narrow and not that complicated. You could figure it out pretty quickly. What to do. Whenever you got to the data stuff, though, now that is a different story. There's the figuring out that world is a whole different learning curve. And so I was glad to have sort of the baseline. Here's how we contract. Here's what lawyers do here. Here's what our risk tolerances are. Overlay to then take that to the data world.
I think that's a really good path. And Pedro and I have similar stories to yours in this respect. You start out in a law firm. I wasn't a litigator, but was doing corporate work, but not the same work I was doing when I went in house. And when I went in house to TD Ameritrade, I was able to like learn a ton in 5 years there. Bigger company, bigger legal team. Everyone had their silo. You had expert friends to go to ask questions as a junior person. That's so valuable. You learn everything you need to know, and then when you really start to, in my case, and it sounds like it was yours, and I know it's Pedro's, like you go in, you're learning your silo, but then you also learn the value of learning and understanding the business and the technology. That takes a little while. And then it freed me up to go in when I went in as the only lawyer at my first gig being the only lawyer. I understood how deep I needed to go on the tech. In order to be an effective lawyer, you've got to go really deep on what your technology does, and double that if you're the only one in there that's trying to figure stuff out and make those decisions. So my story is similar to yours, for sure.
Yeah, at my current job, they have been in business for 17 or 18, 19 years now. I'm legal employee number one, and I've been there 18 months. So they had no in-house legal function before at all. So that, it was a really deep dive, but we had experience from that with the data cloud, right? We saw whenever Oracle was doing all that roll up and pretty aggressive in the M&A markets, they were buying, they bought BlueKai, then DataLogix, then Moat, then Crosswise, then, GrapeShot, all in, a 2 or 3 year period. So you had to learn new technologies pretty quickly. You had to learn how they were contracting pretty quickly, how their service offering differed from somebody else, how it was complementary to stuff we were already doing, so it's hard, but being here, this is why, being a litigator, you just have to be expert enough on stuff. And what I mean is, I had a variety of cases I'd get in. So there was a time I have a case where we learned how it was about frozen pizza. It was a trade secret case about frozen pizza. I could learn just enough about how frozen pizzas are made and the distribution network for it and the research and development that goes into it, enough to talk to a jury about it, talk to a judge about it when I needed to. There are experts who know much more about it than I do, of course, right? Just like in what we do now, there are people, you guys know much more about privacy than I do. You know more about data protection than I do. There are people that know a lot more about IP than I do. There are people that know a lot more about M&A than I do. But I know just enough about each of them that I can be effective as a general counsel to either know where I can plug in or know where I have holes where I can lean on my experts or my outside counsel to sort of bring it all together. And so, that's, I think, I was anxious to get out of being a litigator, but I think that background of, just being expert enough to be able to take all of this specialized knowledge, sort of winnow it down to the usable knowledge, and then figure out how to deliver it to the right audience. That's the main skill I felt like I learned there that translates to being a GC now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We talk about like assembling experts. I guess Bert Kaminsky is the person we have to, and he's going to be on the show at some point, on the podcast at some point, but like Bert assembled this group of people there that we were a part of.
Yeah.
That have gone on. I mean, I don't know how he did it, but like it was you, it was Parton, it was Denise Butler, it was James Turner, who's at Facebook, Ellen. There's like the two Jeffs, Adam Huff, like this like super powerhouse group of brains, all around the same time, within like a year. We all got hired, if I remember correct, a year or two.
Yeah.
And like, I've never been around such a smart group of people all at once. I don't know what your experience was there, but like that's how I still feel about it.
I totally agree. And don't forget Colin Williams. Colin was one of our colleagues.
Oh my God, Colin, he was the first to leave. Yeah, Colin.
Yeah, Colin went out and he became the GC at Reverb, just had a great exit with Etsy. And Colin was here in Chicago, and he founded this. He got there and he was sort of alone, right? He's a tech general counsel, hasn't done it before, doesn't know what to do. So he founded this networking group here called Chicago Tech GCs. Then when I made my move to Centro, he plugged me into that. And it's an amazing group, great resources. We can all lean on each other. We network, we socialize, we're an expert resource. during COVID, we've been getting together, and it's like, whatever the topic du jour is for us. So, like, when are people sending people back to the office? How are you doing it? We have an immediate sounding board, because that's one of the struggles to me of being an in-house lawyer alone is, and at a law firm or at Oracle, whenever we had that great team, you're right, I mean, it was an amazing team. I don't know how Bert did it, but you can just go down the hall or ping somebody or say, hey, let's pressure test this idea. I've got this thing, I've got this problem. This is how I'm viewing it. This is what I think the answer is. Tell me why I'm wrong, or, help me out. I need a second set of eyes. I'm on my own right now. I don't have that second set of eyes. So I have to count on these, these networks like this group, or occasionally my outside counsel. But when I do that, I get a bill for it. So I'd rather use these free resources I have that are amazing. And, kudos to Colin for putting that together. So yeah, that group was, it was like lightning in a bottle at that time. And I think it helped with my learning curve too, having all these people who are super talented there, who have gone on to keep building out their careers to do these amazing things, teaching me, right? Just as a resource right down the hall.
Such an incredibly powerfully valid point that you're making there about peer networks and groups. And we have this exact thing that we've developed. Pedro and I are in this group of people. Started with the NAI, Network Advertising Initiative. People that were going to the events in that board. A couple of us then joined the board of that. And it was there we met this circle of people that were all just able to plug in so deeply. And then we sort of like curated a group of those people to bounce the most complicated ideas off of. And then ultimately you might still need your outside counsel, because the value of your outside counsel is they see tons of clients. And so, but at least you're narrowing your issues there. I know this, and then I've narrowed it down, and then I'm paying for my time with my outside counsel. But it's, Pedro, you'll add to this, I'm sure. It's incredibly valuable to have that group of people to bounce things off of.
It's my number one go outside of like my Oracle alumni group, because Derek and I talk in the background about stuff all the time. When I was making a job change, I talked to him. When he was making his changes, we chatted. I talked to Denise Butler this morning. And we all kind of stay in contact. We have a text group of Oracle alumni, and we all talk. It is my first place, Andy. To your point, like, you start with a big question, and you narrow that question down as you listen to your friends who are just as smart, or many times way more knowledgeable than you on whatever you're asking. And then you narrow it to something short, to the point, and concise. And then you pay for advice, now, your bill is, X instead of Y or whatever.
There's also
totally agree.
There's also little things I'll add, and then we'll get right back to one thing I want to ask Derek, but there's also little things like when you need to, and this is a point we don't talk about very much on this show because it's not really data protection related, but like when you need to understand market salary, if you're negotiating, understand like something serious about you and about what I should do tactically with my career. Like, what is this going to do for me? There's no better group than people like my wife. Like, I can talk about plenty of these things with my wife, but like, that's one set of ears, right? You need like other sets of ears that are also doing what you're doing and get it on a day-to-day basis. It's invaluable for personal stuff too that's related.
Yeah, that's, like, to that point, we because my wife works at a big firm, they have a great sort of I guess called career center, but it's really, they have a lot of people that leave there, right? It's a big firm that churns out a lot of associates leave, but they want those people, when they go, they know that they might go in-house someday, or they know they might need a referral. So they create a great exit an exit ramp for them, so that they feel good and want to refer things back and think fondly of the firm. And so as part of that, they have these great resources on salary information. And like, I just shared that with Pedro in the last month or so about, I have like 4 or 5 different resources that they plug me into that it's salary related. And so you get a pretty good sense from those, but to your point, you can check with people to say, does this seem like market, and not all of it, because each of the companies are going to be different stages of growth, different size of legal department, whatever it is. There'll be some nuances to it, but at least it gives you a range where you can start thinking like, that's about where I feel like I should be.
Helpful.
And then start negotiate around the margins.
I want to revisit one thing you said about litigators as GCs, because I think that's a really interesting topic. When I left, I was at a TD Ameritrade, and I was eventually that general counsel was retiring, and I remember talking to somebody like, well, who do you think's gonna, step into that role? And there were a couple candidates, and one of them was one of the like lead litigators there. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Like that, I wouldn't necessarily have thought about that right away. But then the person walked me through why, and it was like a light bulb went off. Like, oh, of course that person is in consideration for this because they're attached to major litigation. They're understanding, as you said, they're going like down to a certain level across many different parts of the business. Litigation impacts like tons of different sectors of the business. So
yeah,
am I on point with thinking about that? Like that was what was one of the things that was helpful to you in transitioning to the lead lawyer role?
Yeah, and I think too is also you get to see where risk actually lives. And we spend a lot of time, and we did this at Oracle. Whenever we're negotiating contracts, every commercial contract comes back, and the other side wants to talk about warranty, indemnity, and limitation of liability. We spend a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and ink talking about those things. But I never really got a sense were people actually litigating those? Whenever we got out, and so as a litigator, you do get a sense of if you were deep in the business, like your example at TD Ameritrade. That person would see where in our commercial contracts are we seeing a lot of disputes? What's the actual risk for us here? Not what we think the risk is, and not what we spend a lot of time negotiating because that's what commercial lawyers think you should do, but where is the actual risk to us in the business, and how do we mitigate and manage that risk most effectively?
And they were talking about those issues with the board of directors.
Yeah.
So it was also, and the management team of the entire company. So like litigation, if it's big enough, has the eye of everybody that's critical to running even a huge company. So
yeah,
that interesting.
Yeah, I think though, if you're litigating, if you come from a litigation background outside of in-house, and then you come in and do litigation, if you were young, my suggestion would be they should rotate through some different departments. They should see some M&A, they should see some commercial work, just to get a sense for what those groups are doing. Because if you are just litigation the whole way through, you're right, you might get a good sense of the business going through, but you're not going to be, I just don't think you're going to understand enough what those other groups are doing to be able to manage them meaningfully, or really get an understanding of what that day-to-day work looks like. You could of course do it without it, but it certainly would be helpful.
Yeah.
You still riding that little scooter, man?
I don't go anywhere. This is it. Like, you're looking at my setup. So I've been riding.
Was it a Vespa or some shit? What was it, a Vespa?
Yeah.
Vespa.
You got it, Vespa.
Yeah.
So yeah, no mileage.
I just picture you going in your little Vespa to your big GC job, and it's a nice visual.
Well, man, it's a tech company. I'm one of the top 5 oldest people there. So that's if I can pass along any other advice for old people working at and I say old people like me at a tech company, it's this. Young people like emojis and exclamation points, and so when you're communicating with people, like I never once at a law firm used an exclamation point in an email, and certainly not an emoji. And now I would say about 80% of my emails or IMs have one or both of those in them. That's just that's how people communicate.
I'll tell you my favorite like millennialism to use an email is like to add LOL to any bad news or any mean thing. Like, Jesus, Todd, that was really dumb. LOL. Like, like it kind of softens the blow, Hey, you're late, John. LOL. It's like you're scolding, but like you're being nice about it.
Yeah. And so, I've heard people say that if you don't use those millennial signals, that people think that you're upset or something. Like if I just write back thanks, period, it's like thanks. But if I write back thanks, exclamation point, it's like thanks. So they conveys a
enthusiastic, man.
Yeah. So a lot of enthusiasm among millennials.
Really true.
This is deep tech. This is deep
Yeah.
tech advice. I mean, like
Let's talk AdTech. Let's talk
It's-
AdTech for 1 minute because we picked this incredible song, "Look Away," which, by the way, we were emailing before, is seared into my brain for weeks now. It is
I
something
can't shake
about
it.
that song, "Look Away," sticks with you. And I was thinking about it because a friend of mine in law school used to get drunk and sing it at a karaoke bar. We would always end up at the same karaoke bar.
a friend of his.
Oh, well, I
It
mean,
was you, man.
I participated, but this wasn't my song. I had other songs, but this was his song. And recently he had like a video of it and sent it to me and reminded me of it. And it's like perfect for ad tech because there's like people love it. There's revenue everywhere. There's a bunch of businesses doing it, but there's also this aspect of like, look away, look away. Ad tech's doing they're creating device collapse and like what are they doing and what's in their privacy policy about it and so ad tech perseveres through a ton of stuff. And so I was curious to know, like, if you jumped in less than 2 years ago, number one, the tech's hard to learn, but you probably had a foundation for it, coming from Oracle. But like, what was that like, and what's it like to kind of jump into the demand side of that business and it's really a business where there is some of this sort of look away or like, issues to fight through with that tech.
Yeah, to me, the saving grace is still that the U.S. operates on a notice opt-out system, right? Where we're just giving notice of what we're doing, and for the most part, and then just allowing people to opt out. If we had to get consent, like if we had to do an EU GDPR model, that would be nightmarish. And so a lot of it you can just cover over with, here's what we're doing. It's in our privacy policy. We now have better consent management on the front end because of CCPA, where everybody now has a consent management platform or some tool to sort of manage that. But that to me, that's the saving grace, that I still have that as a fallback, where I can just get in, talk to people. What are we doing? Let me make sure it's in the privacy policy. What do you want to do with this when we're doing it? Make sure it's in the privacy policy. And then give people a meaningful, to the extent you can, really, an opportunity to opt out. We have, what was good for us is we have good tech people who were interested in this for me. So there's a guy who is on our DSP ops team who is really privacy focused. And so he is a great sounding board for me, and he's a great ally, because when I want to talk about privacy, I've got somebody on the product team who's already clued into the issues and is ready to jump. And he has, sometimes his approach is even more aggressive than is required. And I'm happy to talk to him about why we might want to do certain things, but I just like having that ally and somebody who's on the inside. And that to me has been a big help with having a privacy foundation already there, even though they didn't have a lawyer doing it, but a privacy foundation there that I could just come in and append to, rather than start from ground zero and try to build something out. So there wasn't resistance to change or suggestion. They were already there with it and doing what sort of the industry basics are right now. And I can just do some fine tuning.
Easier.
Yeah.
What's the future?
Yeah.
What's the ad tech future? Like,
Oh, Christ.
tell me.
Here's what I come back to. There, to me, is this illusion of ROI, return on investment. I hate acronyms, and I know you guys know what I mean, but it's the illusion of it. So, there's this great article that I read, and it's a story from when Google was first starting up, where Eric Schmidt and one of the two Google guys, I can't remember which one, were in a room with Mel Karmazin he was the CEO of Viacom at the time. And they were talking about ad buying, and they said, the Google guy said, look, we can show you how effective this is, right? We can show you return on investment for every dollar you spend. This is how much revenue you're going to drive out of it, because this is how much we convert the ads, and this is how effective it is. And this guy, Karmazin, basically says, don't mess with this, guys. Like, the whole magic for us in the media business is it's a black hole. Nobody knows how, if their ads are effective or not. Because you used to just throw an ad in the Wall Street Journal, or you used to spend $3 million for a Super Bowl ad. Who knows if it works, right? I mean, truly, you don't know if that drove any real conversions. So marketers have become addicted to this idea that targeted advertising yields a return on investment. And I'm not sure if you can really definitively say it, but they believe it. And so that's the most important thing, because when we have the cookie apocalypse coming, and we have, other, the Apple, where they're, going to require consent for use of mobile IDs, all of that stuff. What's really scaring marketers is that they don't, how is my money going to show a return on investment? Because I depend on those things now, and it gives me comfort because I think I'm getting a return on investment. So, I come back to how do we bridge that illusion? It's either come up with some solution. People are talking about a unified ID, and there's, all these, using just IP addresses or some other stuff, hashed emails, and you got a bunch of contextual advertising. Everybody wants to use this as a solution, just use first party data. All these things are sort of floating around there, those are sort of band-aids, because the real problem is this idea that all of that stuff was showing me success. And so marketers have to either come up with a way to sort of reframe the issue for themselves, that this isn't, how do I show return on investment? How do I show my dollars are working? I'm no longer just dumping money into ads that I don't know who sees them. And how do we bridge it? It's different for, the Facebooks of the world, where you have registration-based advertising. You can show these are the people I'm reaching. But for, the tailored advertising, cookie-based world, interest-based advertising, that ROI proposition is really what's at the heart of it to me. And, there's no answer yet. Nobody has a good answer, but some genius is going to come up with some way to get to the marketers and show them the ROI proposition, and why what the new solution is that's on offer is better than, or at least equal to, what they were doing before with cookies and mobile IDs.
It's difficult because people are seeing ads on mobile so frequently and not converting on mobile. And that bridge of that, even with kind of device connected graphs and things like that, it is challenging. And I think, it's not good enough for the ROI to simply be that a company is doing ad tech at scale for brand awareness, when the truth is a lot of it is brand awareness. And if they came to Jesus on that, and we're doing a certain amount of open web programmatic for that purpose, without necessarily having to tie it to clicks or different metrics, then maybe the world will change in that direction. But I think you're correct. They're just going to keep trying to solve for that until the technologists are so smart that I think they'll keep iterating on it, and they'll keep trying to solve for it. And we've talked about this a couple times, like whether the solution is a unified ID or a hashed email or a thingamagigawatt, like it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same story. There's always a buyer for open web programmatic. There's always a buyer for deal ID based advertising. There's a buyer for contextual advertising. The market's so big that it's not going to go away. It'll just change, and more money may be spent in a walled garden, which is good news for a Google and a Facebook or somebody, maybe. But there's still a lot of money spent in other places. So it's not like it's just one. Marketers are always going to want a mix of channels, because they're not going to want to be dumped into, like, I only see you on Instagram. Their brand is going to need to be seen elsewhere.
Yeah. And marketers don't want to lose their budget, right? They're not going to say, well, you gave me $50 million last year to advertise, but that stuff I was doing with programmatic, I don't know if it works or not. So that was $10 million in my budget. You can just take that. Like they want it, and they're going to keep it, and they're going to find some other channel to put it into. It's a matter of telling them which ones work and which ones don't, and showing what the value prop is for it.
Last question is
problem solved.
Last question is Chicago pizza.
Careful.
Well, when you say Chicago pizza, you're talking about one of the subgroups of Chicago pizza, I presume.
I'm talking about deep dish. My favorite pizza place in Chicago is Peace Pizza, which is not deep dish.
It's New Haven style, yes. And so there's all these subgenres. So you've got deep dish, that's most famous. You've got what I call birthday party tavern pizza. So every kid's birthday party that I went to for 10 years had the same pizza. It's wafer thin. The crust is almost like a cracker. It's cut into little square pieces, not pie slices. So you've got that. That's
checkered tablecloth red lamp, right?
For sure. You've got some pan pizza places. You've got hand tossed New York style. So that's its own, it's a
So deep dish. So
we're thieving it.
let's focus for a moment on the deep dish.
Deep dish. The essential components of a pizza: crust, sauce, cheese. They're all there. So it's definitely a pizza. Close to a lasagna, but definitely a pizza.
Very legal argument.
But under that definition, I feel like a sandwich is a pizza.
Well, I guess it's
Farm,
a
like
hot dog a
panini.
sandwich. Is a hot dog a sandwich? There you go.
This is a deep question. Now we're getting really philosophical. I'm gonna turn to St. Thomas Aquinas tonight for this question.
Why don't you ask it? Why don't you ask it on Facebook, my friend?
I may do so, but I'm afraid of some of the responses I'll get. But we'll see.
Derek, this is awesome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for getting the good Zoom room for this.
Say hi to Squinty, the one-eyed lizard.
Yeah. Oh, shout out to Squinty.
Yeah. Shout out Squinty. shout out Lily the pug too. Don't forget about her.
That's right. Lily the pug. Thanks, bro.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.